Hello, 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 and welcome to Beyond the Code. Today on Beyond the Code, I'm joined by Joseph Page, who up until recently was the lead investor at Block Builders, and today is the founder and CEO of Square Quark, a Web3 focused early stage venture capital firm. Jacob is looking to raise some capital and also deploy some serious capital in the next few months. He'll be at Token 2049 Singapore and at the Solana Fest right after it. He's also a Solana Maxi. So tune into this episode to find out about who he's investing in and what he's working on. Welcome to Beyond the Code, the podcast where industry experts and brilliant legal minds discuss the impact of new emerging technologies. I'm your host, Yitzy Hammer, a lawyer and tech enthusiast. Join us as we explore the legal, regulatory, and ethical issues surrounding AI, blockchain, and more. Get ready to go beyond the code and stay ahead of the game. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Code. Today on Beyond the Code, I'm joined by Joseph Page. I am not going to even begin to try and introduce him. Every time I meet him, I get a whole different vibe. I can't really figure out where he's from. He's Chinese, he's Hispanic, he's Israeli. Unclear to me. As always, I'll let Joseph introduce himself. Joseph, welcome to the pod.
To be honest, it's quite often unclear to me as well. I've worn so many hats throughout my short lifespan. I feel that depending on the person I'm introduced to, I have to put on a different one, right? Just to relate better. So I'm originally from Honduras, from Central America. I left home quite early when I was 18 and lived in Taiwan for almost a decade.
Wow.
Before moving over to Tel Aviv, yeah.
On your own or with your family?
On my own.
Like what spurred that move?
If I could put it into one thing, ping pong.
Ping pong. You put
Yeah.
Really? What, you're like an expert ping pong player?
I to this day play the league here. And I did
Wow.
play the league in Taiwan as well. I played at home as obviously we did win the nationals in my second year of university. I think the bigger one.
Wow.
But yeah,
So
that's what
so
drove me.
you got really good at ping pong in Honduras, and then they said like if you want to move up to the major leagues, you got to go out to Taiwan.
No, I needed a good excuse for my parents to not think I was insane. And Taiwan was the best option for me in terms of cultural exposure, in terms of learning a new language, and being able to practice ping pong at the same time. You know, I hit all those notes at once, and I also got an education. So I guess it's a good run.
Wow. So you moved there, what, like after high school, and
Right after, like the very second.
you enrolled in university there?
I did, yeah, both my
Okay.
bachelor's and master's in
In
Taiwan.
what? What'd you study?
I did international business in Danjiang Daxue. It's a private university up in the north side of the island. And my
Okay.
master's, I did it in finance and international trade
Wow.
in the center of the city in Taipei.
Okay. So what was that like 4 or 5 years? 3, 4 years?
You mean total?
Yeah. So you
My
did your
bachelor's was
bachelor's and
4,
master's. When did you
and the master's
enter?
was 2.
Wow. And so when did you enter into the job market? How did you become this like mega Solana beast?
So when I did Aliyah, I was already to a degree into investing because of my degree, but I hadn't found
Okay.
crypto. So I started working in a big international conglomerate, Indian American conglomerate called USC. My boss and mentor to this day, Michael Marks, got me through the ropes, and he was leading the innovation analytics here in Israel.
Okay.
So I had the best job in the world. It was to find cool new stuff that the conglomerate could utilize, acquire, or further invest into R&D at. So I had a kind of quite a macro overview, let's say across verticals of the Tel Aviv ecosystem and what was being built here. And one of the projects I was doing back then or was researching was procedence. And they wanted to kind of figure out a great way to make sure that winemakers were actually delivering what they said they were, and the procedence of this wine and these grapes were from where they said they were.
So I
And I
apologize for
found
my ignorance. What are precedents?
from proceeds, from where do you proceed from
Okay,
procedence.
I learned a new word.
And blockchain actually applies, the distributed ledger applies quite, because of its immutability, applies quite well for this specific need. It's
Okay,
just not in demand. But that's what got me into the rabbit hole. So as it hit me, what Bitcoin meant to the world, I got deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole, and it got to a point where I I had most of my savings on chain.
wow.
Um,
Wait, place me. What year are we talking about?
this is late 2020,
Okay,
and I was
fairly
going,
fairly late to the game.
yeah. I think I was late. I think that's also what kept me intellectually honest with myself in terms of at least this full rounder of a cycle.
Mhm.
Um, I had to formulate my own thesis quite late back in 2020, where Ethereum was the only game in town. Um,
Good times.
and from the thesis I had derived upon what drives us humans into adoption of technology meant that I had to look for four specific things. That was hedonism, which is really what drives us in most things, right? Oh, look, this iPhone's better than this Android phone. It looks better. It's better quality. So that's one. Word of mouth. It's what your community tells you to buy. And the most important ones for me, which are also the easiest to quantify, is speed and cost reduction. So if you have an increased throughput and by definition a cost reduction in any specific thing you're buying, then you're going to be driven to buy it more
Hmm.
often than not, because over time humans just prefer to save money, right? It's a core key driver. So I had to derive that thesis when investing, and Solana was already in the market. It was worth $3, so I went all in on that. I also went all in Luna, so
So
don't color me
you bal
hyper wise.
yeah, you
Um,
balanced out the good bet with the bad one. Okay.
yeah,
Wow, $3 Solana. I totally missed the boat on that one. Okay, so you aped into Solana, but you also presumably got involved in the ecosystem at some point. Because when I was
yeah.
introduced to you, you were like a big man in the foundation.
Not in the foundation. I would say in the local community,
Yeah, on the.
mostly.
Hmm.
I started actually uh, investing from a private vehicle in mid 2021. I
Hmm.
think by then Solana was already hitting 40,
Okay.
and I was already thinking on capital allocation, right? Like the greedy person in me was like, don't take profit, reinvest. So that was the first actual iteration of Strange Quark.
Hmm.
Um, and our thesis was quite simple, actually. Anything that SBF touched was gold. And it's hard for me to claim this, because up until today, I think that there's a huge bias against what Sam did overall. But the sentiment was completely the opposite back in 2021. He was revered, and his thesis was
For
championed
sure.
as um,
He was a
the make
boy
all, right?
genius. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I remember meeting I mean, he's now a friend, a guy in Paris who told me that his company had been bought out by Alameda and he was like a gazillionaire because he got paid in FTX tokens, which were just on the up and up. But
yeah.
now he's
But
sad and
I
broken.
think there was a lot of good takeaways on the investment principles behind their vehicle. If you put aside the massive levels of fraud, the people he had working for him at Alameda were highly competent and
Sure.
very shrewd, sharp people. So it was quite easy for me to kind of find a lot of tailwind into what they were allocating into. So that was my 2021 thesis. As
So you were making
2022,
those investments as part of a team, or that was just on your own?
I had angel backers and own capital mostly. But
Okay.
as 2022 rolled in and the Luna crash happened, that's kind of where the alert started ticking, right? That this this was going to take time. And to be honest, it didn't skew in any way my faith in the industry. It further reinforced for me
Good for
the
you, man.
nature of it.
Hmm.
I kind of had to tell myself, right, and look at myself in the mirror quite often, knowing and seeing how the other cycles had played out in expectation of what was about to come. Um, but by then, I was already quite involved with a few local firms and working quite closely in terms of deal flow sharing and sourcing of deals. And the closest firm I was working with was Market Across with Itai, Nadav, and Alad. So we partnered up. They were the best mentors I've had. They introduced pretty much the entire stack, and it gave me even a bigger macro view of where the industry was. And it
I
was
just
just a privilege for me to be exposed to all the L1s and verticals in the industry. It gives you just so much more context, right?
just for anybody
Uh,
who's listening who's not familiar, Market Across is like the PR newswire of the crypto world, and they work with most of the top layer one blockchains, and yeah, they're stand up guys, Itai and the
yeah,
rest of the team.
the agency's amazing. They're still growing. There's around, I think, 50 to 60 people at the office.
Wow.
It's an amazing vibe. People my age, I don't want to say your age, but my age. Uh,
Ouch. I'm not
you
that
already have
old,
a dog.
man.
You already have a dog. So I would say there's a
We'll see if he lasts
generational
the night.
divide there. Let's see. So yeah, working at Market Across, I was able to allocate into myriad different projects across the stack, across verticals as well. And that's kind of how I found my wedge, right? So I could say I started out quite concentrated. Then I opened, from the macro perspective, my understanding of the industry to now dial back in to a more concentrated thesis behind my principles of investment. Yeah.
So in our Market Across, you were working there as what, like an investment arm of the team?
So we propped up block builders together. I helped them kind of paint a professional VC standpoint behind the firm's investments.
Mm-hmm.
And block builders actually deployed for over 2 years into more than 25 projects,
Wow.
I believe.
Okay.
So it gave me a lot of great insight into founders, great insight into also who's effective and what's effective in terms of building. And if you look at the cycle, like I think we're in such a healthy spot, even though it doesn't feel like it. Um, Both from the investment side and the founder side, both parties are actually a lot more sane today and are looking for closer metrics in terms of growth metrics, in terms of any type of expansion. Everything is done with a lot less flair and pizzazz. People just get to work a lot more in this stage. So it's actually quite an exciting time, I feel,
I
for the
agree.
industry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your last and probably most significant gig in your pivot to what you're doing now was setting up a investment arm for Market Across in the form of block builders. You did that for what, like 2 years?
Somewhat, yeah. Two
Okay.
years plus.
2 years and a bit. And now you've gone out on your own and you've started your own fund, which is pretty much exclusively Solana focused, right?
No, I wouldn't say that's correct.
Okay.
It just happens to be that Solana fits quite perfectly in my thesis.
Okay.
And Solana is the one with escape velocity as well in terms of liquidity within the network. So it's quite ideal for my Portco base to build on Solana as of now. But I
Okay.
am open to any and all other parallelized systems. I'm actually quite product focused. I don't care much for infrastructure. I think we're past that stage where infrastructure is worth much of anything. There's still being sold at inflated prices, I believe, and I think the infrastructure is there. You can build stuff already with it.
So
So
what
it's
would be
time. It's time for
your
products.
like dream investment? Like number one, what type of checks are you looking to write? Number two, like for young entrepreneurs and startups out there who are listening and might be interested in looking for investments, like who's your target market? Like what would be your dream investment?
So my dream investment is the first one and the inaugurating investment of the fund, BlockMesh.
BlockMesh.
BlockMesh, yeah.
Okay, tell us about them.
Had the founder just won actually the first place at the Deepin Hackathon, the Global Deepin Hackathon in Solana.
Wow. Okay,
Um,
what are they
so
building?
he's so BlockMesh is actually building a AI monitoring solution for deceptive alignment. Um,
What is
so
that?
with the advent of AI, all of these LLMs are more and more skewed towards myriad types of biases.
Mhm.
Um, and the thinkers of this world, the people that are actually very concerned about um, generalized artificial intelligence, AGI, are actually looking very closely at solutions that help monitor the veracity, the hallucinations across geodiverse locations. So the answers you'd be asking Claude or Llama or ChatGPT might differ regionally. And this might be a bias, a simple model training error, or governmental influence, right? In the case of China, that is a very real possibility. So
Or Facebook?
truth, yeah, I mean, truth is faster than we think going to start to be derived by the average output of all of these large language models.
Hmm.
And there needs to be a way for a trustworthy source, right? Think of Wikipedia and the editors behind Wikipedia. They're all like sentinels and they're quick at what they do. Actually, it takes a few hours for you to edit a Wikipedia article and write something wrong, and somebody is going to go up and patch it. So with AI, this is just going to become a lot more real time and deriving whether or not there is misalignment.
Hmm.
Um, and we're calling it deceptive alignment monitoring is going to be a huge necessity on the corporate level, on the B2B level, and even on the SMB level to be able to give better service, but also to give governments, institutions, universities actual insight into what is real, because that's going to start
So how does BlockMesh
not
do that?
being that real. So BlockMesh is distributing nodes across the globe. Right now, they've got 30K nodes already in their network, and these nodes are quite easy to install, and you're earning money immediately from point of installation. And in exchange, you're allowing BlockMesh to proxy your IP to be able to scrape this data, right? So if I need to know, is Donald Trump bald? Uh, so I ask this question, and this AI monitor pings all of these IP addresses across the world. Now, how is this a lot more effective than Web2 incumbents? it's very hard actually to distribute IP. And this usually happens in data centers, which are already flagged or doxed in ways. So you can spoof this. And the more you want to scale these IP addresses, the higher the cost. So current monitoring solutions, which is really a blue ocean, is this is a nascent industry within its
Hmm.
own, but current Web 2 incumbents, they're not only centralized, which is a huge vector of distrust, they are only distributed across specific geographies.
Hmm.
But what is being told to the people in Nigeria, in Argentina, in Bangladesh, in Australia? You don't you don't really know, because most of these distributed proxies are just across 200, 300 different IPs. You want high granularity in terms of the veracity of the data you're looking for.
But I'm not understanding. Is BlockMesh an LLM or is it a LLM validator? And if it's the
Neither.
latter, how
It's
is
a
it using those IP addresses to validate?
so so as a user of BlockMesh,
Hmm.
I simply install a web extension and I allow the network to use my IP address as a proxy to understand the data. So I allow basically my
So
IP
it's a
address to
trade-off.
ping.
Like if you want to use the data, you need to share data. Is that what you're saying? I can't be a user
Correct.
without sharing my data.
I'm not sharing my data. There's no um,
Well,
insight into what
you're allowing you're allowing the protocol to scrape your local IP in order to validate other people's input or the output rather that would
you're
come.
allowing the protocol to use your bandwidth, which is what you pay your internet provider. So
Okay,
that bandwidth is
so I understand
outbound.
how it
It's
makes
not
it
looking
maybe
indoors, it's looking outdoors.
right. So I understand how that might be making the use of AI models slightly cheaper, but I'm not understanding how this enhances the truthfulness of the output, which is the problem that
It's
you
not
initially represented.
enhancing the truthfulness. It's a tool with an actual revenue model, unlike most tool sets in crypto, that allows people that are actually building LLMs to
Hmm.
cross check, cross compare institutions, educational institutions that want to uphold, let's say, truth, to be able to check and cross references across models, right? Think Llama, Commandar, Claude, and make
Right. So
sure that they are not
the
only not hallucinating, but they have consistent answers across the board.
but you're assuming that the creators of these LLMs are truth seekers. Presumably, the bias that's inherent in these LLMs is embedded there by their creators. So I'm not sure that
And we
they're
need to know that.
after the same truth that you are. Maybe the users are.
Yeah. But having this full open kimono is a necessity with the advent of these new AI systems. You need to know where you're standing as the world gets murkier and murkier with biased AI models.
You're preaching to the choir, man. I'm fully on board, but you need the LLM creators to cooperate. No.
Yes, 100%, but that's not BlockMesh's job. BlockMesh's job is to just be able to source whether or not there's any deceptive misalignment happening.
Mm.
And that needs constant and consistent asking of questions, right? In IPs in Australia, IPs in Uruguay, IPs in the US, asking the same question over and over and making sure every individual is getting the same answer, not being fed
So the
something that
protocol will query those IPs, and where will the answers come from?
from the large language models. The
Mm.
idea is to ask across geographies, right? And make sure that there's no hallucination, that there's no misalignment in the data that's being provided to the user anywhere in the world.
Okay, so BlockMesh is your first investment, and you'd be interested in
Yes.
making more investments in these like AI focused.
So
Um,
back to the question of what would be the ideal investment. So
mhm.
my thesis is on DPIN and DVIN. So that's decentralized physical infrastructure and
Okay.
decentralized virtual infrastructure.
Okay.
And my ideal investment as of today is BlockMesh because it's virtual infrastructure. There is no hardware componentry necessitated apart from your computer. But then
Mm-hmm.
again, you need a computer to partake in crypto. So it's already a given you have one.
Sure.
And bandwidth is not a constant of hardware.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a crappy computer with a crappy GPU, I can still install the extension. And what I am giving back to the network is my bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
So it requires little to zero actual processing capacity from the computer side. So it's quite effective in terms of distribution as everyone can become a participant through your phone, through your computer, through wherever.
Okay. So DPIN and VPIN.
DVIN, yeah. So
DVIN.
DPIN does have a physical component, whether it's a camera for mapping or a cellular tower or cellular 5G cellular receptor, right? For in case of helium or hive mapper, usually requires a physical component.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason either of those are ideal for me is actually the behavioral economics behind these networks. Um, they do have a modicum amount of speculatory nature behind them,
Okay.
which means that people still trade these tokens on chain, but the participants involved in these networks are actually a lot more long term aligned. Um, this is in stark contrast with what um, people see crypto as today, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's highly speculative, highly volatile. And don't get me wrong, most DPIN, DVIN companies today, they still trace as the market traces, right? Like it's still quite volatile because of the nature of the game. But from a company standpoint and from a participant standpoint, it's actually super sustainable. Um, and what do I mean by that? As you install, in the case of BlockMesh, for example, just to put it into context, if you were to install this web extension and have BlockMesh running in the background, querying through your bandwidth, it really costs you nothing in terms of cost basis because you're already in need of internet. It's a commodity at this point. So you're not going to stop paying for internet. So you might as well have the extension and it's passive income. As you see this passive income grow, as the network grows, you are reinforced to not only hold these tokens, but maybe stake them for more rewards. And you have virtually very little effort needed on your end. There are some DVINs or DPINs that require a little bit more involvement, but because of the passive nature of it, people are just a lot more aligned and less incentivized to stop being involved in the network. So this creates a positive feedback loop in terms of how people see this. It's really cool to see how some networks are already hitting escape velocity, like Render or Helium.
Sure.
There's a lot of products that are already doing great.
Unfortunately, from a tokenomics perspective, in most cases where you're being compensated in tokens to perform an act, in this case, giving access to your IP address, there's, tons of incentives to get tokens. But if the token hasn't been appropriately integrated into the protocol's ecosystem, you wouldn't necessarily need them for anything. And therefore, there virtually be no liquidity and people would just be getting tokens and it'd be worthless. So
100%. And
it
usually most projects fall under this pitfall, going to market too quickly, throwing a token out, having the first initial backers see the token, see a payday, cash out, and really wreck the initial price of the token.
I'm
The
not even
key
talking
thing
about
here,
the price from a pricing perspective. I'm just saying, like, not everybody needs a token. Unfortunately, so many products feel that they want to have one, and if the token isn't absolutely necessary to fuel the ecosystem, and it's just something that people get, then it becomes less and less of an incentive as the market becomes flooded with these tokens and nobody actually needs or wants them. They just want to sell them as they get them.
Well, there's so many quote unquote governance tokens, right, that you can put in this batch. I do believe in
And
token
what are they worth?
utility. Yeah, in token utility is not only a meme; it's actually a real thing. And for that, actually, DVIN and DeepIn have an easier time than, for example, DeFi tokens, simply
Okay.
because there is, as long as you have a demand side, you can play around with the supply, right? You can burn tokens as the protocol starts getting paid for this bandwidth and create a positive flywheel, right? I think tokens that are being rewarded to the BlockMesh nodes should be considered as passive income. It should be sold. It's something that should be added to the equation.
I like to be wary of the use of the term passive income given the questionable definition of securities around tokens. Passive
Yeah,
income is
I
generally one of the.
I look at it from the perspective of a Honduran, right? Like I think the global South, generally
don't
speaking.
don't look at it from the perspective as an American.
Well, yeah, from the investor side, obviously, but I would say from the user side, people that are going to adopt and become nodes for this network are people that, first of all, have very to little access to global finance. It should empower them. It should actually help them survive in terms of the cost
Excuse me.
basis. Um, the developed world doesn't have a need and really cares a lot for the privacy vectors. I think that's just a non-issue in the global south, and it's just improving people's lives all across the board.
I'm here for the ride. Tell me,
Aren't we all?
um, as someone who's continues to be deeply ingrained in the Solana ecosystem, and you did mention that your fund is blockchain agnostic, but I it's clear that you like Solana. What are your thoughts for the future for Solana? Do you still think it's a good blockchain to build on? Do you think that existing projects will continue to grow? How do you think the massive supply that was accrued by SBF and is slowly being sold off will affect Solana going forward?
I think
I
there's
saw
like
that
15 or
SBF is like
16 billion dollars that are going to be returned to
right, some of which has
to
already
creditors, to lenders
been
of FTX.
been returned, and I saw that
Yeah,
SBF is pumping Solana to guards in prison. Obviously, everything we say in all of our episodes is not financial advice. Just because SBF is telling prisoner guards to buy Solana doesn't mean you should, as tempting as it may sound. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
so first of all, Strange Quark is a primary market fund, and its mandate and mission is to allocate stable capital into projects that are building for the future.
Mm-hmm.
So there's very little space for us to speculate in secondary off the bat, but we do have a thesis. So here's where the claim comes. I do believe there is no new L1 narrative left. I think this is still Solana's cycle, not only due to the comeback, but due to kind of the nature of the foundry and the culture that's being built in
Okay.
Solana. Um, there's something quite clear to me. And don't get me wrong, I think Ethereum has, on a per capita level, just a lot smarter people, like on a per capita level. There's just so many academics, researchers working on stuff in Ethereum, still orders of magnitude bigger in terms of community size.
No
The
offense
difference,
to my good friends on Solana, Ariel Gifner and Johnny JPEGs, but I tend to agree with you.
yeah, but there is a very big cultural difference in the builder base in terms of how they deliver and how they think about what's being created on these networks, which is really for me into two different brackets. One is academia, and the other one is engineering. People in Solana iterate quite in a fast pace. They don't mind going through 5 to 10 product cycles within a month and having it break over and over and over. Whereas the approach in Ethereum is more white-glovedly. They tend to really, really take care of all the eggshells around them, and they operate also with the same premise of research. They take their time. They do a 9 to 5, 5 days a week. They only have one coffee a day, kind of vibe, and it's not me, right? I truly believe in fast paced iteration, and I think startup culture requires that. Startup culture requires more engineering thinking, and I think that's a big, quite obvious to me cultural difference that is very hard for people to see when they're standing on the other side of the fence, just because they haven't experienced kind of like the how people iterate here without a care in the world.
I think, like as far as I'm concerned, from an outsider, I'm generally more of in Ethereum, generally more bullish on Ethereum. Been kind of skeptical of Solana ever since I bought Step-in shoes that went like quickly to zero after I bought them. But I think the coolest things about the Solana ecosystem is the people, guys like you and some other friends. Solana hacker houses, which are these like really cool events that they have globally every once in a while, are like so well done, and they have very, very strong communities, and they know how to like really create a vibe for developers. In that sense, I think it's like it's a fun place to build. But lastly, they have some like rockin' commercials.
Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning. We got your ether scan back, and unfortunately, we found something.
What is it, Doc?
You've been diagnosed with ETH maximisis. You're an ETH maxi. An ETH maxi.
Nathan. Doc, that's not possible.
It's okay. He's going to take some time to process this. He can only handle 10 alphabets per second.
He has been really slow lately.
Is he allergic to anything?
To any wallet that isn't MetaMask.
Allergic to good UI. Any difficulties while digesting?
He couldn't digest the fact that Austin Federo went unbankless. But is he going to be okay, Doctor?
I'm going to need to run some more tests. What do you see here, Nathan?
What are you doing?
What? I'm just booking a cab with a decentralized application on Ethereum Layer 1. See? It's 5 minutes away.
He's seeing fully functioning consumer apps and white papers. That's stage 3 of ETH maximizes.
What does that mean, Doctor?
Do you see all of this gas in his transactions? It's only a matter of time till he gets wrecked.
There must be some here.
We can reduce gas if we use Wormhole and bring him into the Solana ecosystem. Exposure to real apps that actually work can cure him. But we must act quickly or he'll progress to stage 5.
What happens in stage 5?
That could be fatal. That's when they start a podcast. Quick!
What's happening, Doctor?
It's a common reaction faced by ETH maxis. They can't function without another layer. Layer 3. Layer 4. Every day, millions of devs suffer from ETH maximisis. Extend them a helping hand by guiding them to Solana, where they can create actual consumer dApps and not just white papers. Layer 68! Layer 69!
Yeah, it's definitely a vibe. I'm not sure if it's
Think of it from first principles. Core users, core degen users, they tend to always be first in terms of zeitgeist, in terms of where the cultural norm is flowing towards and where people want to be at, like where the spot's at, where people are hanging out. Think of degens in crypto as that kind of decentralized culture, right? And
Sure.
if you look at it, if you go to Dex Screener, you find out that these degens have gone full circle. They've completely migrated over to Solana, and you have to really take a hard look and think, if adoption looks like anything, it starts at least from the first movers and from the first testers. And these guys have already been indoctrinated. Go to DeFi Llama and see all the volume metrics of the last month. First, it was days. Some days Solana was ahead of Ethereum in volume. Then it was weeks. Now it's I think it already hit monthly. So it's slowly becoming a reality that verticalization is a lot easier in terms of adoption than this whole distribution across L2s and fragmentation of liquidity and fragmentation of attention. You don't want that. You want to be the Apple that controls the whole vertical of the stack rather than the guy that sells the software for all the highest bidders, right? It's just how I look at it.
Yeah. Like they say in the Solana commercials, every day millions of devs suffer from ETH maximalists. Talk to your doctor today, and he'll give you Solana. Yeah. Anyways, I think this is a good note to end on. If you're not if you're an ETH maxi like me, approach Solana with curiosity. If you're a entrepreneur or early builder and you're looking to get support from one of the new VCs on the block, you should definitely talk to Joseph Page. You could reach him on LinkedIn or on Telegram at, what's your Telegram handle?
At Joe Strange Q. That's
Joe
Strange Quark.
Q. Whoa. Or you could check out strangequark.xyz. XYZ. In true degen style, he got himself an XYZ domain.
For sure.
Check out strangequark.xyz. If you're going to be in Singapore next week or the week after, rather, definitely hit up Joseph and me. We'll be at Token 2049 Singapore up on the 4th floor. Come and visit. Give us a shout. And make sure to subscribe to be on the code.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks, Joe. This is great. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Code. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, share with your friends, and to tune in again next week for more fun and insightful conversation.